I understood the polymorphisms of SNP meant that you'll have problems with the gene. If I understood you correctly, you were saying that the polymorphisms aren't as significant as we believe. About 20 years ago, when I first started this with Sterling Hill from mthfrsport.com and Dr. Ben Litch, we used to treat genes. Okay. Now, at the time, we were saying, oh my, if you have CBS polymorphism, we have to be careful of your sulfur intake. And after a little while, I was thinking, gee, that makes a lot of sense. As we were doing, just talking about glutathione creation, we were cutting out sulfur so much that people were getting sicker. It's because you need sulfur, okay? And it came to light one day when, one of my colleagues' patients called me because he wasn't available and told me she was having trouble breathing the whole bit. I said, well, take the NAC or take it. But that's sulfur. I said, I know, just do it. In 12 hours, she's better. So we stopped looking at individual genes as being devils, but looking at the pathways and figuring out which pathway under an oxidative stress load may become dysfunctional. It gives us places to look. And that's the benefit of the genetics. Sadly, my medical colleagues are still back in the dark ages, and I don't mean that offensively, although I guess you could take it offensively, but you shouldn't. Okay, where they're thinking like MTHFR is this horrible entity. If you go on the internet, you're going to see MTHFR, and it's going to still have those websites up that have these lists of things that happen from MTHFR polymorphisms. Why is that? Well, when they first started doing this, okay, that's one of the first genes they would test for in epigenetics. And anybody who had a problem got tested for this. A lot of people have this particular, set of polymorphisms. So they just kind of compiled all the things that can happen if you have this polymorphism. Well, by the way, if you're treating MTHFR and you give 5-methylfolate or some of the really high levels of 5-methylfolate, you're not treating the pathway, you're not fixing the pathway, you're giving the result of the pathway, which means they're going to have to do it for the rest of their lives. But be that as it may, it's important to realize that we've progressed to the point where we look at the entire pathway and say, how am I going to help that pathway? Well, let's say the folate pathway, which is where MTHFR ends up. Let me see if I can make sure that they have, a good source of folate, green leafy vegetables, okay? And they have enough digestive enzymes to break that down to the folate. And if the pathway, SLC19A1, MTHFD1, MTHFS, all those guys, if they have a lot of polymorphisms, let me at least give them what they need to work, which is usually NAD and ATP, which you kind of have to get your mitochondria working, okay? And if I do that, then MTHFR will work the way it's supposed to, because now I've got substrate that is creating folate, ultimately is transformed into something called 5,10-methylene tetrahydrofolate. And methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase, MTHFR, reduces that to 5-methylfolate, which is what our body uses as a folate. And folate is important in a lot of different biochemical processes. Okay? So that concentration on a gene, frankly, is passe. It's incorrect. And those websites you're looking at are all old. And people who call themselves methylation practitioners are usually selling product. Okay, no offense. Well, yeah, offense, because they're doing it wrong. All right? They're selling product. And they'll look at the genes, look at that. You need this. And frankly, if you walk into a doctor's office and you need to walk out with a shopping bag full of vitamins, something's not right.